Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Kyle back with the Fantasy Headliners Week 4 research starts right now with our waiver wire video, getting you ready to start taking a look at what players are the best additions for your teams this week. And I saw it in the comments last week. Kyle, why do you drop the waiver wire so early when there's so much more research to be done? Well, here at the Fantasy Headliners, y'all are successful because we stay one step ahead of everybody else. And if you're starting your waiver wire research on Mondays, it is giving you a better opportunity to really target who you should be putting in those claims for when the waiver wires run later in the week. Let your league mates start their research on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. You start now, that's going to put you ahead of the game. But as always, here on the Waiver Wire Show, we've got running backs, wide receivers, and tight ends that you should be taking a look at. We got streaming options for the quarterback position as well as defensive special teams. And we're going to talk about some players that maybe we got to think about dropping and if it is time to do so. But first up, it is going to be the running backs. And honestly, our very first running back up is going to be our Fantrax find of the week because he is going to be probably one of the most important additions this week for all rosters, and that's going to be Khalil Herbert from the Chicago Bears going up against the New York Giants this coming week. Demont left last week with an injury. Ankle and knee. It sounds like it's two separate issues. We don't know what's going to happen. He left in the first quarter and he was doubtful right away. Have not heard more than that right now. So if you're a David Montgomery owner and you don't already have Khalil Herbert, you need to add Khalil Herbert. If he's out there and you don't own him, if you don't own David Montgomery, but you need help at running back, we are adding Khalil Herbert. 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. We've seen this with the Chicago Bears offensive line already. When you take a look at it, they can run block just fine. They can't pass block to save their lives. So Chicago is really leaning on the run right now, and going up against the New York Giants, I assume they're going to end up doing the same thing. If there is no David Montgomery this week, Khalil Herbert could be in for a really nice week. Alexander Mattison, Dalvin Cook right now sounds like from what the team has said that it was a dislocated shoulder. It's the same shoulder that he's always had issues with, and he's going to be fine to play next week. But if for some reason Mattison is still out there on your waiver wire, somebody got tired and dropped him after the first couple of weeks because Dalvin Cook was fine. We've seen that happen from time to time. I know on certain platforms right now, he's sitting around 60% owned or so. Go out and grab him and have him just in case something happens with Cook later in the week and they decide to hold him out going up against the New Orleans Saints. And then Samaje Perine from Cincinnati, Joe Mixon, kind of the same boat as David Montgomery right now. He has some sort of a foot injury, but we don't know what it is. We don't know what that foot injury is. From what I read, it sounded like he initially tried to play through something. Like it may have happened earlier in the game. He tried to play through it, and then they ended up taking him out because he just wasn't able to do anything on it. And now we're looking at Joe Mixon to see how long is he going to be out for. But really only 3 guys at the running back position that we're taking a shot on this week, because all 3 of them are guys that could end up stepping up into a position where they're going for where they're helping out for other guys who are the RB1 on the team. That's what makes them the most important addition so far on this week's waiver wire. So if you need running back help, some of these guys are going to be the ones that we have to go after this week. Now hold up, stop the show. Breaking news. We're cutting into our own waiver wire show to let you know that Tom Pelissero is reporting that Lions running back DeAndre Swift could miss a few weeks with a sprained shoulder. Now, could miss a few weeks. There is no guarantee of any missed time as of right now. I was going to include Jamal Williams in this video even before that news broke, but then when I looked up his ownership percentages, he's over 75% owned on Sleeper. He's over 60% owned on ESPN and Yahoo. He's more than likely owned in your league, but if for some reason you go to your available players, you search Jamal Williams and you see his name come up as a potential ad, he's the number 1 priority this week now. I know Herbert was my quote-unquote Fantrax find, but Jamal Williams is now going to be the guy if he is available in your league. If he's not, that's fine. I would, however, for deeper leagues, consider Craig Reynolds. If you look at the way that the Detroit Lions have utilized their running backs over the first couple of weeks, we know Jamal Williams was still getting touches as the 1B in that offense to DeAndre Swift. And now they're going to want to keep Jamal Williams healthy as well. They're not just going to shoulder him with a ton of work. They're going to also include Craig Reynolds. And if you watched Hard Knocks on HBO with the Lions, you know how much this coaching staff loves Reynolds and what he means for this team. He is going to get work. He is going to get looks. He could become fantasy viable at some point. So for you deeper league players, make sure that you also take a look at Craig Reynolds this week. Have tons of wide receiver options this week that we can go through. Devontae Parker, he's coming off a 10-target, 5-catch performance for 156 yards. He's going to get Green Bay this coming week. It sounds like Jair Alexander is going to be out for an extended period. He has a growing injury. Jacoby Myers missed this past week. If he ends up missing again, Devontae Parker being the number one on that offense is great. However, it does depend a little bit more on the Mac Jones. Now, it looks like a high ankle sprain, 3 to 6 weeks typically for those things, so it isn't anything, thank God, that was worse than what we originally saw based on the pictures. But for him, for Devontae Parker, if he's the number one in this offense going up against Green Bay, could be a great opportunity for him. Devin, the Duvernay, as I like to call him around here, going up against Buffalo this week. It's going to be a tough matchup, but if he's still sitting out there right now, he keeps scoring. I mean, the guy is just finding touchdowns all over the place right now, and he's averaging almost 15 yards per catch right now. The guy has become a big play option there in Baltimore, which is what I kind of had mentioned about him earlier in the season. Rashad Bateman this past week did see a few yards, didn't find the end zone, didn't have that big play like we've seen the first couple of weeks, but Devin the Duve keeps getting more and more options. We got to have him on our rosters at this point, it looks like. Traquan Smith is going to be a guy to keep an eye on for New Orleans. Jarvis Landry and Michael Thomas both left the game at certain times this past week. Jarvis Landry dealing with something. It sounds like Michael Thomas has a foot injury, specifically more like turf toe or something like that. We don't know how long they could end up being out for, if they're going to miss. If they do, we know Chris Olave, who after those guys got hurt, got absolutely peppered with targets last week. Traquan Smith also had a pretty decent game. If he ends up needing to step up, especially in a matchup against Minnesota, he could see some decent targets. Isaiah McKenzie for Buffalo. Gabe Davis is still banged up. He's not 100% healthy. He could be this week. Baltimore's defense did look a lot better this past week than what they had looked as of recently. Isaiah McKenzie did see 9 targets. Keep an eye on that. If Davis heading into week 4 is still banged up, Isaiah McKenzie might be a late week add for those of you that are looking for some depth. Josh Reynolds for Detroit. He looks like he's kind of the number 2 at this point for me. He has a history with Goff. Both of these guys were together in Los Angeles. They have a connection already. His 10 targets led the team last week, and some of that has to do with Amon-Ra St. Brown. He went down early in the game. It looks like kind of twisted his ankle up a little bit. He kept coming on and off the field a little bit. He wasn't nearly as big of an impact later in the game as what we had seen early on in the game. That could leave an opening for Josh Reynolds to see an increased volume moving forward. KJ Osborne for Minnesota. I'm not running to add him, but it does look like more and more teams have basically said at this point, we are going to take Justin Jefferson away, and if Adam Thielen and KJ Osborne beat us, so be it. But we are taking Justin Jefferson away because he is not going to beat us. So if you're in a much deeper league and Minnesota is going to be playing some games coming up where they could be behind, like a New Orleans game where this could end up being a little bit of a back and forth, the more 3 wide receiver sets we see Minnesota run, the more we're going to see KJ Osborne out there. Matt Collins for Las Vegas, a huge week, 10 targets, 8 receptions, 158 yards with a touchdown. No Hunter Renfrow due to a concussion. How long is he going to be out? If you're in a league that you have to play 3 wide receivers and you're having issues with depth right now, and we see that Hunter Renfrow is going to be out again, take a look at Matt Collins going up against Denver this week. Devontae Adams could have a tough matchup, could allow for Matt Collins to step up and give you some fantasy value. Zay Jones for Jacksonville. Clear number 2 on a team that is throwing a lot. Christian Kirk's the number 1, but Zay Jones is showing that, he's got potential. Last week, 11 targets, caught 10 of them, 85 yards, and a touchdown. Again, another guy that's more of a deeper league stash for me. That's the case with KJ Osborne, Josh Reynolds, Matt Collins, Zay Jones. All these are guys that are a little bit of a deeper league stash where you have a little bit of a larger bench, where maybe you start 3 wide receivers or 2 flex options. That is where I'm adding these guys, maybe a 14 or a 16 team league, situations like that. Romeo Doubs is a guy that 100% should be added all over the place at this point. No Christian Watson this past week. Led the team in targets, and he feels like he's becoming kind of the volume guy. Now, last week's start and sit video, I had mentioned that Green Bay doesn't have that go-to guy anymore, and I still believe that is true. That there's not going to be one guy on a weekly basis that we say he's the guy getting the targets. But I do think Doubs is going to be a guy that as we move forward with him, he is going to be the one that is going to see the majority of the volume. 8 targets, 8 receptions, 73 yards, and a touchdown this past week. No Christian Watson. We know Allen Lazard has been banged up. Lazard did end up scoring. We know that they've had a lot of injuries all over the place. Romeo Doubs is a guy that 100% we need to be adding. Same thing as Greg Dortch. We talked about him last week, and I said he's definitely an add right now, but he's not necessarily a start. Now we've got another injury to A.J. Green. Now Greg Dortch is becoming an absolute start for us. We're going to be putting him definitely into the top 36 moving forward. He's probably going to be a start with no issues this next week going up against Carolina. 10 targets, 9 receptions, 80 yards, number 2 in that offense. One thing we just have to keep in mind, if you're looking to add Greg Dortch, he could lose a lot of that value when we've got a guy like DeAndre Hopkins coming back in a few weeks. So for Greg Dortch, he's more of a short-term investment for me, where if you're dealing with injuries or things of that nature, you grab a Greg Dortch, but I'm not burning high priority waivers for him just because he could lose that value here coming up very soon. The tight end position has 4 guys we're going to talk about this week. David Njoku. Don't you love it when you spend the first 2 weeks talking about somebody saying, man, they're going to get him going, and then the first 2 weeks it does absolutely nothing, so you say, hey, let's just go ahead and wait right now. Let's put David Njoku on the bench. He absolutely could get going, but we're going to have to wait and see it, and then boom, he gets going, right? Well, he gets Atlanta this coming week, and it seems like everyone almost gave up on him. I was pretty close to it, but 10 targets, 9 receptions, 89 yards, and a touchdown shows what David Njoku can do in this offense. Cleveland needs to keep that going. I can't guarantee that they're going to do it, but he should be the number 2 in that offense behind Amari Cooper. And we still have later in the year Deshaun Watson coming back, meaning this offense could get even more dynamic. Jacoby Brissett doing a great job holding down the fort right now. He's getting the ball to the guys that he needs to get him to. So for me, great. David Njoku is still going to be a guy that we need to kind of stash and hold and play in certain situations right now. Jelani Woods from Indianapolis, rookie, scoring 2 touchdowns this past week, really making Mo Cox Mo Problems look like a guy of the past. Jelani Woods is not a priority add for me right now, but he is a guy that we need to monitor closely. Could be a new go-to in the red zone for Matt Ryan. We know that Matt Ryan has Pittman, but other than that, he doesn't have a guy that he consistently can pass to. I mean, Nyheim Hines isn't getting consistent targets. Alex Pierce back this week isn't getting consistent targets. We know Paris Campbell wasn't. So for me, Jelani Woods is a guy we're absolutely going to keep an eye on, because if he continues to catch Matt Ryan's eye and Matt Ryan feels comfortable with him, he's going to start going to him after Michael Pittman quite a bit. Irv Smith Jr. from Minnesota, another 6 targets this past week. Now, he did drop a couple, and that's my main concern with him right now, is we're seeing some volume left on the field, or some production left on the field, because of some drops that he should be hauling in. We need to get him going again. Keep him on your radar, see what happens. Tyler Conklin is the guy that I would add right now if you need tight end help, but the biggest question about him is going to be Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson will be back in week 4, it appears like. Conklin has been darn good. He plays over 90% of the snaps, which is what you want for a tight end. But when Zach Wilson comes back, is he going to have that same rapport with Tyler Conklin that we saw that Joe Flacco had? Now we're moving on to the streaming portion of our video. This is where we talk about quarterbacks and we talk about defensive special teams options that you might be wanting to add to your team this week, just to stream for the week. I've got 3 options at quarterback that we've been taking a look at. Jacoby Brissett going up against Atlanta. Atlanta's allowing over 23 points per game to the opposition right now, and he's coming off a pretty big performance against Pittsburgh. 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. This is a guy that we're absolutely looking at this week streaming against Atlanta. Let's say maybe if Tua were to end up going down and they say, nope, he's going to have to sit this week and shouldn't have come back into the game as quickly as he did. If Justin Herbert ends up missing this week, if Mac Jones ends up missing this week, we're having a little bit of an injury issue at the quarterback position right now. So there are some guys that you could potentially need to stream. Geno Smith going up against Detroit. I think we're seeing it with Detroit's defense. It's going to give up chunks of yards. It's going to bend. At times it's not going to break, though. And now they might be missing Tracy Walker in the secondary. That could be a huge miss for them. And Geno Smith with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, Detroit could have their hands full this coming week. Davis Mills for Houston going up against the Los Angeles Chargers. Chargers are going to be missing Bosa. They're going to be missing Joey Bosa this coming week with a growing injury, it sounds like, and they just allowed 38 points to Jacksonville. Keep an eye on Davis Mills this week and see if he can provide some clear fantasy value for you. On the defensive side of the ball, only two teams I'm really looking at this week saying I really like these options. Las Vegas Raiders. Denver's offense has not looked good. I mean, even at home this past week, a whole lot of punting, and it was a game that they barely came out on top of. So they did look a little bit better at times, but the Raiders are going to be at home. Denver going on the road into a potentially tough environment could be good for Las Vegas. Las Vegas looking to get that first win of the season. I'm sure they would love to do it against an in-division rival. For the Jets going up against Pittsburgh, I mean, Pittsburgh's passing game has been basically embarrassing so far this year. They haven't really done much of anything. They're trying to rely on the run game and then hope Mitchell Trubisky can just move the ball down the field, dink and dunk. I think we're going to see Kenny Pickett very, very soon. But I think the Jets, if they completely shut down the pass game this coming week for Pittsburgh and really focus on the run game and stopping Najee Harris, they could find themselves in a pretty decent position come the end of the day. Now, before I move on to players to drop, one other piece of information that I want to note for you. A lot of times in the comments we see, Kyle, can you please add what you would spend for your FAAB money? FAAB meaning free agent auction bidding. So I don't do that in these videos because every league can be different. The amount of money you're allocated is different. The players that are available is different. I don't have an idea of what is on your roster. Just because someone says, Kyle, should I spend $30 on so-and-so this week? I can't see who else is out there. I can't see, okay, if you spend $30, how much do you have left? If you say I should spend this percentage, well, again, just because I say spend this percentage, I don't know how much money you get throughout the week. I don't know how much money you get throughout the season. I don't know any of that. So anybody out there that just preaches different FAAB money that you should spend, really they're leading you down a dark hole where you don't understand exactly what needs to be used. So I don't include those in those videos, but if you want to let me know in the comments down below, like I said, I'm doing this with the waiver wire video this year. Players that you're thinking about dropping, let me know down in the comments before you just drop them. I'll get to as many as possible. FAAB money, if you have a question about FAAB money, give me as much information as possible, and I'll let you know whether or not you should spend that portion on somebody. So let's talk about some players to drop. Well, George Pickens and Chase Claypool are both up for me first for Pittsburgh. I just mentioned it. You know, George Pickens obviously had a great catch this past week, but unless Kenny Pickett is starting, I have got no interest in Claypool or Pickens this year. They just can't stretch the field with Trubisky at quarterback. It's not happening, and neither of these guys are fantasy viable right now. Unfortunately, at tight end, Hunter Henry has become pretty unviable. Might have made up a word there. But he's not doing anything for New England right now. New England's passing game is kind of a mess. It has nothing to do with Mac Jones. It has a lot to do with the offense that's in place right now, unfortunately. And play calling isn't great right now. They're not utilizing their strengths. They're getting in positions where they're trying to play from behind, which isn't their strength at all, and they're having to get crazy in the passing game, and that's not what New England wants to do, and it's making it look worse. But they're not utilizing Hunter Henry, and they're not doing Jonnu Smith either. Nyheim Hines for Indianapolis. I'm still keeping an eye on this for another week or so, but I mean, I'm running out of patience with Nyheim Hines. This is now back-to-back years where they've said, yes, we need to utilize him a little bit more. They gave him a big contract last year, and they just don't continue to do it. It's one of those great mysteries that we run into where you've got a player on your team, and we look at it and we say, man, this guy could really help, and then an offense just doesn't do anything with him. That's concerning for me. Darnell Mooney for Chicago. I mean, I don't have much longer for him either. Another week of just watching Chicago be very bland with the pass game, with the play calling, and they're not utilizing Justin Fields. As of right now, this is another absolute awful hire for Chicago, and they have again missed on an opportunity. They spent all this draft capital to move up and get Justin Fields, and they're not putting him in a position to win. Awful pass blocking. Don't have a whole lot of weapons on the outside. Not throwing the ball, running the ball quite a bit. just for Chicago, for me, Darnell Mooney, we're going to give it another week or two. Keep him on your bench. But if he doesn't get going soon, we'll probably have to end up moving on from him. And for Treylon Burks from Tennessee, another guy that we're going to be close to moving on from. I mean, the offense just isn't that good. We did see Robert Woods bounce back a little bit this week, and I think that's really good for him to see where he stands in terms of his health. But they're spreading that ball around an awful lot. And big games are probably going to be here and there for Treylon Burks, but not a whole lot other than that. And because of it, I don't think I can really rely on him, and would rather find some better options from the wide receivers that we had listed earlier than him as of right now. But ladies and gentlemen, there you have it, the waiver wire video for week 4. Do me a favor, hit the like button, hit it, smash it, knock it out of the park. Hit that like button for me down in the comments. If you got questions about guys you should drop or FAAB money, leave those questions down below. I'll answer as many as I possibly can. And of course, if you're new here, you got to hit the subscribe button and stick around for all of our content. Appreciate you all for tuning into this video today. Hopefully your week 3 was great. Hopefully your week 4 is even better. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.